Austin.
Hannah. Welcome to episode 17.
And welcome to Mike and Brian from the 70s versus the 80s.
Hey.
Yeah, thank you for having us on.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Hey, so just a couple quick questions for you guys. We were just curious for our listeners. When did you guys start your podcast, and what is your podcast about?
Yeah, like half the world, we started it during COVID, and we're trying to get it out monthly, but we're kind of far behind that pace. But I think we're going to try to get it out every 2 or 3 weeks. And Brian, Why don't you kind of explain what it's about, Brian?
So we've taken kind of childhood memories from the 70s and the 80s, and we just are looking back at them through the filter of 30 more years of, or getting 40 more years of living. And it's just fun things that are dear to our heart. And we're not afraid to tackle the controversial stuff. We're going to do on an upcoming episode, we're going to go into the deep, dark controversy that is who invented the game Cornhole. And during my research, I found out that I thought there were 3 possible inventors, but then when talking to Mike, he said there's a 4th one. The people that are the natives to our great country believe that the Black Hawk tribe in Illinois invented it. Okay. Our European friends believe that a German cabinet maker named Matthias Cooperman invented it. He was watching kids toss rocks into groundhog holes and thought it'd be safer if they threw bags of corn into holes that he drilled out in cabinets. And our friends in Kentucky believe, and this has kind of become a personal favorite, that a farmer named Jebediah McGillicuddy invented it with things around his farm. And I thought that those were the 3 factions, but Mike thought that there's a 4th faction.
I always thought it was the great Cornholio. Sorry, I can't say it like Beavis, but
I am the great Cornholio.
There, that's better, way better.
Yes. So on an upcoming episode, we're going to get to the bottom of that to determine who actually is the inventor.
Yeah, and it's always very controversial. Yeah. I know you guys were on like the Shining episode with us, and that was a great episode everybody should listen to. And it was like,
absolutely. Like
Hannah brought up how there was so little snow during the giant snowstorm, and I've seen that movie 20 times, and I never thought about it until she said that, and it was so we kind of got into a big discussion about that.
Yeah. It's the deep, hard-hitting journalism about the 70s and 80s that's missing today.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah, it's a great show, and
a really good show. They bring a lot of things to light. It's a good time. Couldn't ask for a better group of guys over here.
Yeah, and like they mentioned, we were on their episode talking about The Shining, so we wanted to have them on and join us and join our banter, and yeah, so that's what we're doing. Here we are. So Austin, do you have anything fun for us before we get into stories?
So, I didn't find any stories that I were like super wanted to share. They weren't as fun as I thought, but I want to do a shout out. We actually have our first couple listeners in Ireland.
Yes, I saw that. I was going to bring that up.
So, if you're listening
Hello, Ireland.
Hello, Ireland. We are here from the great Minnesota, the White North.
The White North.
Pretty sure it's Canada, but I want to take it for Minnesota.
Well, we might as well be Canada at this point.
I mean, we do have a city called Little Canada here, so.
Yeah, we do. So, yeah, I have something for you.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I guess it's not really something, but I called Robert's residence.
Okay. I hate you so much right now.
Because I wanted to get you an answer on how you know whether you can take a picture
Did he pick up? Did Robert himself pick up?
I wish he would. I wish someone had picked up. It ended up being an automated thing telling me who to call if I wanted to do a school tour or, things like that. And then it just hung up.
Oh.
I was like, well, I tried. That's why it was kind of not something, but it was something. I tried for you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it so much.
I had high hopes that I would be able to get a hold of them and at least get an answer to that question, but those hopes were shot down real quick.
See, if this pace keeps up, next thing you know, I'm going to be on a flight to Florida with Hannah.
He's going to be.
She's going to be, hey, we're flying to Montana to go to Glacier National Park, Austin. No, we're going to Florida.
I'm going to lure you down there sometime.
Oh, my God.
When the fact that Robert and Florida are one and the same is far gone out of your mind.
Robert the Doll and Florida should not be in the same sentence, and Austin should not be in
But
that
does
same
he not
sentence.
sound like a Florida man?
Florida, that's what I was
He's
going to say.
definitely
Yeah. He's the original Florida man.
He's a-
Doll man.
He is the original Florida man.
He's the reason why we have Florida Man.
Probably.
He's,
All those ghosts in
he's the
him are
puppet master.
all those ghosts in him must be finding their next victim when they come through, who they're gonna possess next, and then they just become the Florida man or the Florida woman. I'm sure there's a few Florida women too.
Oh, there's probably more than a few. It's Florida.
It's Florida. All right. Well, with that, should we flip a coin and get started?
We sure flip our coins.
All
Your
right.
turn this week,
We have
Hannah.
our little quarter here. All right.
What do we got?
We have tails.
All right, Hannah.
That is me, isn't it?
That is you. Yep. It's been a while.
It has been a while. All right, so I tried to set my story up kind of fun with a little story in the beginning, but you guys are probably going to see through it right away, so here we go. All right, so in 1974, an up-and-coming author and his wife decided to take a one-night trip to a beautiful but dwindling mountain resort they heard so much about. The author had been looking for inspiration for the book he was working on and wanted some peace and quiet. They were the only ones checking in that day, as the next day the resort was to close for winter. They got to enjoy everything the hotel had to offer all by themselves, and the husband spent some time wandering the halls and taking in everything he could, and eventually they retired to their room for the night. That night, the husband had a nightmare that jolted him awake. He had dreamt of his son running terrified through the halls of the hotel with a fire hose coming alive and chasing him. The man later said, "I woke up with a tremendous jerk, sweating all over within an inch of falling out of bed. I got up, lit a cigarette, sat in a chair looking out the window at the Rockies, and by the time the cigarette was done, I had the bones of The Shining firmly set in my mind." In case you haven't figured it out, the author was Stephen King, and the resort was the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado.
Ooh.
So, ooh, I know.
And I bet we can guess what room he stayed in that night, too. Was
I bet we can. So I thought it'd be fun to cover the Stanley Hotel with you guys on, since we talked about The Shining on your show. So
Excellent.
Here we go. All right, so the hotel was built by Freeland Oscar Stanley, who was the inventor of the Stanley steam car. After a diagnosis of severe tuberculosis, he was advised to move somewhere with fresh, dry air and lots of sunshine. So Stanley and his wife found themselves in Estes Park, and within months, Stanley had made a full recovery. Some accounts said that he was actually told he was going to die, so basically just move somewhere nice and live out the rest of your life. But by the end of the summer, he was taking nice long hikes through the mountains and they had just fallen in love with the area. And since they loved the area so much, Stanley and his wife decided that they would spend their summers out there every year. After a couple of years, they found the lack of social scene and entertainment to be a bit disappointing, and they set out to build a luxury getaway in the middle of the rustic homesteaded area that was comparable to what they were used to back east. And they also wanted to offer others who were afflicted by tuberculosis to have comfortable accommodations, and just benefit from the healing air of the Rockies as well. So, on July 4th, 1909, the 48-room Grand Hotel was opened. The Stanley was one of the first hotels to fully run on electricity, and I believe it was actually the first one on that side of the Mississippi to be fully run on electricity. It had running water, which was supplied from the Black Cannon Creek. There was a full staff dressed well in uniforms, all rooms had ensuite bathrooms, and each room had its own telephone, which was unheard of in 1909.
Yeah, I'll say.
Freeland Stanley had the first local hydro plant built, which also provided electricity to the growing town. And a lot of the money and things that he put into this area really helped with the growth of the area and the town and the community and everything throughout the years. It was actually kind of quite amazing. So the hotel also had a fleet of steam cars to take guests to and from the local train station.
Man, they just had everything.
They
for
went
these
all
people.
out, and Freeland Stanley was footing the bill for all of this.
Were they not making profit off this? Is that what you mean? Like he's footing the bill?
I think he had been quoted saying that he spent more money than he made while he was out there running it.
Damn, he just wanted everyone to have a good time. It sounds like.
He really did. It was kind of awesome.
A way to
Like-
expose your cars to the public by having them shuttle them from a train station back to the hotel.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
all of these people are going to be going back east after their fun getaway out in Colorado, and they're going to be like, "You're never going to believe it. We had these cars that were made by like the Stanley Steam Company and like all of that." It's
And just look how it
I can
paid
just
off,
see
because
them.
now everywhere, there's steam cars everywhere. Oh, wait, sorry, I guess.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, wait.
So the hotel had its ups and downs, and by the 70s, it was struggling to stay afloat, partially because Stanley and his wife had passed away and nobody was footing the bill for everything anymore. So they were struggling to make ends meet until Stephen King's novel The Shining came out. King has always openly talked about the inspiration that the resort provided him for the book, but he's really clear that the setting is where that ends. All of the characters are from his own mind. He made all of them up. I just thought that was interesting. I was like, well, I mean, I guess you could probably assume that he met a few characters while he was there, but...
I was hoping the guy in the bear costume was real, but I guess he made him up, huh?
Hey,
Damn.
you never know. I bet if you go out there on Halloween weekend, there's probably a few guys in bear costumes out there.
Oh, the shame. If anybody has seen The Shining who is listening right now, I hope you are getting these references.
So today, the Stanley Hotel has 140 rooms, 11 structures, and a few interesting spots.
Okay, you need to define interesting.
We'll get there.
Okay.
So some of the structures include a concert hall, a carriage house, the manager's cottage, and the lodge, which is like a bed and breakfast. That's like part of the whole, the grounds and everything. In 2015, a hedge maze was added in homage to The Shining, the film. And there's a pet cemetery on site that was not inspiration for Stephen King's Pet Cemetery later on. I just want to note.
Oh, okay.
Because I was curious. Where pets of past owners and probably current owners laid to rest. And then there are underground tunnels that connect the buildings that were used by the staff in the early days of the hotel. And we love underground tunnels.
We do love underground tunnels.
And on top of all of that, it is incredibly haunted.
Who would have thunk?
Who would have thought? So I just want to point out, I have about 6 pages of notes here. The hauntings take up about 50% of that.
Oh, wow.
And I still hardly scratched the surface. I've hardly scratched the surface with the history. I did what I could without it turning into an incredibly long episode for no reason. Some of the common things. There are full-body apparitions, things moving on their own, voices and laughter. In photos, there have been ghostly figures caught peering out of windows, sometimes from rooms that are like closed off to the public or even just people working there. They're just nobody goes in there for any reason. The caves seem to be haunted by a pastry chef, and they usually smell like fresh baked goods for no reason.
Count me in.
Yeah, if there's a ghost ordering checklist, that's one of the first things you want to check off, the pastry-smelling ghost.
If you tell me not to go into an underground like tunnel system and it smells like baked goods, no chance. I'm going in there. I'm not listening to you.
No, exactly.
I want to see what's going on in there. I want to see if I can find the Muffin Man.
Keebler elves, yeah.
At least a good bear claw with Boston cream pie or something.
Oh.
There's also a gray cat that's been seen in the tunnels. Some speculate that the cat probably just wandered in at some point. This is a ghost cat, but they assume that when the cat was alive, it had just wandered in from one of the places where the tunnels came out.
Really, if you think about it, aren't all cats ghost cats?
Yeah, really.
Yeah, they are. Speaking of, where's yours?
Being a ghost cat right now.
Being surprisingly quiet.
I ran her hard, so she would like sleep.
Wow.
Like I wasn't gonna allow her to mess this episode up.
Let's do 5 minutes on the kitty cat treadmill.
Yeah, I need to get her one.
Stanley himself is said to linger in the billiards room and the bar, while his wife enjoys playing the piano late at night.
I'd like to play a round of billiards with Stanley.
He seems like a good guy. I would go to the bar with Stanley.
Absolutely.
And they've also been seen standing together at the top of the grand staircase, looking out at everything that's going on in the lobby, proudly just keeping an eye on their hotel. They truly, from what I can tell, Stanley and his wife loved this place with all their heart. They were so proud of this place and so proud of just what it had become, and they just loved making this like great experience for people. So I think it's very fitting that they would still be hanging around.
That part of the country is unbelievably scenic. It's really close to the entry to the Rocky Mountain National Park.
Yeah, I was thinking that. I think the Stanley is just a couple miles from the entrance to the park.
And it's a really gorgeous part of the United States.
Yeah, the one time I went out there, it was in the 80s when I started, and then I started climbing, and I actually got snowed on after starting in the 80s.
Oh, no.
Yeah. pretty amazing out there.
I was out there just over a year ago, and I was lucky enough to spend a night up in Dillon, which is up in the mountains, for a wedding. So we had been in Denver for most of the time, but the last night we took the trek through the mountains for a wedding, which was on top of a mountain, and it was really gorgeous. It was pretty cool. So the staircase in the Stanley is called the Vortex. It seems to be highly charged with spiritual energy. People have gotten nauseous out of nowhere as if something has just like walked right through them.
Ooh.
And orbs and like figures and just weird stuff have been caught on film and photos when people are picturing the staircase. Some believe it's a portal or a spiritual highway, and that's part of the reason that the hotel is so haunted, which I know somebody who has a portal in their house, essentially, like a spiritual highway in their house, and sometimes...
Ghost train station.
Basically, and sometimes they do just fall off, and they're like, oh, what am I doing here? Like, they didn't realize they got off on this exit, so...
Wow.
7:15 to the Waverly Sanatorium.
Jeez.
Yes, I did cover Waverly Hills, a little while back.
Yeah, you sure did.
I sure did.
Yeah, there's got to be a train station between the two.
Oh, absolutely.
Man.
They got to visit each other. I mean, come on now. They got to ghosts. I believe ghosts have friends. I mean, come on.
They got to be going on
You
vacations.
have friends in the Stanley Hotel, Waverly Place,
Eastern State.
the Winchester House.
Oh, yes.
Like there's
The Winchester Mystery House. That's... Yep.
I just want to get a portal in my house. That sounds sweet. I mean, I can barely get my Wi-Fi working half the time. I mean, a portal would be cool.
I mean, if you'd mind not sleeping ever again, then yeah. we can arrange that. We can make it happen. All right, so the infamous room 217 has its own ghost. I do want to point out, I think we mentioned this on your show, the difference in the numbers between the book and the movie. So the book is 217 because that is the room that Stephen King stayed in. In the movie, it was 237 because the hotel that they were filming at thought that the idea of a haunted hotel would drive away guests. So they made the people making the movie change the room number to one that didn't exist on their property. There's that. Room 217 in the Stanley is haunted with its own ghost and everything.
its own very own.
Its very own ghost. Her name is Elizabeth Warren.
Oh.
She was the head chambermaid of the Stanley. She didn't actually die at the hotel, but she was involved in an accident in room 217 when a gas lantern had been leaking in the room, and she walked in with a candle.
Oh,
Is that
no.
bad?
Yeah, so, I mean,
I think we're about to find out.
some reports say that she was blasted from that second floor room down into the dining hall of the first floor. There's some speculation of whether that tidbit is true or not, but it's definitely repeated a lot. She survived
No.
with 2 broken ankles.
Ow.
That's it. That was it.
That was it?
That was it,
From
and
up-
she-
No burns, nothing?
Nope, and she returned back to work. I believe Stanley covered the hospital bills and everything during that time. She returned to work. I believe she was promoted, and she worked there for the rest of her life.
100 years ago, they probably made their chambermaid or head maid outfits out of asbestos.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
That too.
wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
There was a lot of crazy accounts. One person said they watched a bathtub fly up in the air and come back down. I mean, this obviously took out a good chunk of the hotel. The other thing, too, when she went back to work was that Stanley was like, you can do anything you want to do here while you're working. You never have to light a gas lantern again. And the whole reason they were lighting the gas lanterns was there was a storm outside and it cut the power. And so they had to go around and light all the gas lanterns for all of the hotel. So let me tell you what she does now in the afterlife, because she's still working hard. She's still earning that title of head chambermaid. So people have come back to their room with their things unpacked and or woken up to the room being tidied up, so the room being substantially cleaner than it was when they went to bed the night before.
Oh, I was imagining like you sit up in bed and you just see like your towels and your clothes. No. Your underwear is like flying by.
What I would give, though, to go to bed and wake up with the room being cleaner.
Yeah, it'd be a bonus if they also had that pastry smell.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Clean room and fresh baked good smell. Oh,
The dream.
Sold.
So when you leave a tip at the end, do you leave like a ghost tip also? I mean, you don't really have to tip her if she's a ghost, right?
I mean, I think it's the appreciation. I think a thank you is enough of a tip usually. In this case, if it's a real maid, tip your maid.
Yeah, yep.
Always tip your maid.
One couple reported that their bed was made around them while they were sleeping.
How do you make a bed around?
You're going to have to ask her.
Well, we're going to
Because
have to go
Elizabeth
and
has
visit.
it figured
Is this
out.
before Colorado legalized weed?
And could you imagine?
Get high ghosts, right?
Very
High
very
ghosts,
high
I
ghosts.
mean,
High altitude, high ghosts, high
what
gas.
else are they supposed to do over there? They've got an eternity.
They're dead. Like, come on, live it up, right?
So while Elizabeth was mostly helpful, she is not a fan of unmarried couples sleeping in the same bed. So couples have felt a cold and like angry energy settle into bed between them at night.
Oh, no, thank you.
And there have been some accounts in the morning of the men's suitcases being packed and by the door waiting.
Wow.
Oh,
The mother-in-law energy there.
yeah. Very subtle.
All right. Yeah, super subtle.
I love this for her. She knows what she's about. So there are some pets haunting the grounds.
Yes.
So there's a fluffy white cat. I don't know how to pronounce this. I think it's Comanche that's seen around. As far as I know, Comanche's just seen kind of buzzing around doing cat things. Like Brian said, just being a ghost cat. And then there is Cassie, the golden retriever,
Oh.
who is super friendly. Apparently, she still delivers newspapers sometimes, and she's said to scratch at the doors to be let in.
Wow.
I love that. Sad that there's a dead dog, but I love that in the afterlife. She's still doing things.
It sounds like she loved it around there. She had her own routine. She's enjoying her time there still. There is a spirit of a little boy that wanders the grounds
Yeah,
and
no
likes
thanks.
to play with people's hair.
Nope. Nope.
There's actually quite a few ghost children.
Yeah, no thanks. I know.
So, and as I just want to point out, as far as I know, there are not actually any deaths on the property. So, like, it wasn't like a bunch of kids died here or anything. They're just, later on, we'll get to, I have something about why there might be so many ghost children. But,
All right.
And
Yeah.
in your research, were there any dolls there?
no,
Brian.
unfortunately.
Wow. Lucky this ain't a
Unfortunately for
visible
us,
medium.
there weren't. Maybe we'll bring a doll there when we go there, because when we're going to Colorado, we have to stay here. Like, no choice. We're going to stay at the Stanley.
I understand this as long as there's no dolls and the children stay away from me. I really do not like ghost children.
Cannot promise
Anna,
that.
you are a medium. You can talk to them.
Yeah, I can also. That's not always going to be in your favor.
Okay.
Just breathe. It's fine. So, the ghosts don't like the vacuums, apparently. Sometimes they unplug them while someone is using them, or the vacuums will just, like, act up before they completely stop working, even though they're, like, fine normally. So
So what about getting one of those manual-powered ones like they have at movie theaters? Just do that.
I don't know.
Can't turn it off.
You can't
Joke's
turn
on
it
you.
off. Yeah, there was one article I was reading that was like, hey, if you're too scared, just find a member of the cleaning staff and ask for the vacuum.
Wow.
Apparently.
Be fine.
It's probably the ghost cats that hate the vacuum if they're like the cats I know. So.
Probably.
Oh. Maybe Cassie, too.
And then we have our buddy Paul. He used to enforce the 11 p.m. curfew of the hotel in, like, the early days. People have heard him telling them to get out late at night if they're still kind of lingering about or not in their rooms.
Paul sounds like a dick.
Yeah.
There was a construction worker that was working late one night and heard Paul tell him to leave, but thought nothing of it because he was alone. And then Paul started nudging him towards the door, so he decided he would just be done for the night.
Yeah.
So getting physical. Paul needs to back up. Man, Paul, you got nothing else better to do?
Oh, okay, no, he does. Paul likes the tour groups, and he actually flickers the lights for them.
Wow.
Give him a show, the old razzle-dazzle.
Razzle, razzle.
Paul needs to get his beauty sleep to be able to do the show, so that's why he wants some quiet at 11.
I mean, honestly.
It's all coming together. It's all making sense.
So the fourth floor of the hotel is by far the most active, and yes, we're staying on the fourth floor.
Son of a bitch.
401 has an unfriendly male ghost that's been reported touching female guests inappropriately.
You pervy ghost bastard.
I know. And a male guest that stayed in the room once reported watching his wedding ring being pushed into the sink and down the drain.
Oh, God damn.
So somebody's very salty, apparently.
Ouch.
In room 407, people have reported being tucked into bed and feeling someone sitting on the covers. And when they turn on the lights, there's usually an indent in the comforter, like someone is sitting on it.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Wait, you don't want to be tucked into bed by ghost hands?
Absolutely not. I don't even like being tucked into bed by anybody, let alone ghost hands. Cold and just, no.
Can you imagine you're like almost asleep and suddenly you're just being tucked in by nothing?
Just got two, yeah. No thanks. That's just,
I'll be sleeping in the car tonight.
Yep.
Forget that I paid $150 for this room. I'll be in the car.
I wonder if they have a massage room in this hotel. They're just kidding.
You wake up in the middle of the night, you're getting a massage by a ghost. I don't know what's worse, getting tucked in by a ghost or a massage by a ghost.
I guess it depends on how good they are at massages. Like, are they getting the knots out of my shoulders?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Maybe you make that $150 extra worth it then. The tucking, it's that.
It's the tucking for me.
The tucking, I don't. Yeah, okay.
All right, in room 428, there's a cowboy that's seen standing over the bed or in the corner of the room. And then my favorite part of this is that even though there is nothing but roof above this room, people have heard the sound of footsteps and furniture being moved around coming from the ceiling, as if there is a whole other room above them. On the 4th floor specifically, children can be heard running through the halls, talking and giggling.
This is why you want to stay on the 4th floor.
Sure is.
God damn it.
Closet doors open and close on their own, and sometimes you can hear kids whispering in the closets.
No.
Some people think that the reason that the 4th floor is so active, especially with children, is because...
Sorry.
Quit throwing your head into the microphones.
I'm so uncomfortable right now.
So for a long time, the 4th floor was the attic. Then it was renovated into housing for staff that were women, their children, and the nannies. So some people think that like maybe it's the children from then. You know, they say sometimes ghosts return to like their happy places and the places they loved in life. And I have to imagine a childhood growing up at the Stanley was probably just insanely wonderful and such a happy memory that there would probably be a lot of ghosts that return there. So that makes sense.
It'd be pretty
to me.
cool if one of those kid ghosts was like on a big wheel. That would be really cool.
That's terrifying, Mike. I don't like that at all.
Maybe we'll bring one and see if they play with it. Austin's like, you're getting your own room there.
I'm going to stay at the Motel 6 down the road.
So today, the hotel offers ghost tours and shining tours. The hotel is not shy about the ghosts that reside there and even claim that they only have happy ghosts, which I think is very
They all
cute.
say.
That's what they say. And they also offer a ghost adventure package where guests are given a room on the 4th floor, ghost hunting equipment, and a mug with the famous red rum on it.
Ooh. Just don't put that.
Oh,
Don't put that in the
actually,
mirror. I guess. Don't show that against the mirror.
I guess.
Yeah. No, you don't want to.
Well, if you're gonna get
So
a mug, it's
that
all worth it.
I mean, honestly, like, get a little keepsake, the spooky keepsake.
I'd probably try stealing the ghost supplies.
We're probably going to show up with our own, let's be honest.
True. I do have my eyes on a spirit box right now.
There you go. So that is the Stanley Hotel. That is my, I want to say shortened version of it, but...
Oh, it is. Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot more. I barely scratched the surface, so if anybody wants to know more, there is a plethora of information out there. But yeah, I mean, maybe if we go out there, I'll return to the subject.
We should record an episode
We should record an episode there, and then
Yeah.
maybe we'll have some more information to share from like the staff and everyone about
maybe
what's
they'll allow
going
us
on
to,
there,
like,
about other ghosts.
interview some people.
Yeah, so
That'd be cool.
Record while you're on
there
a
it
tour.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's the goal, and we're gonna make it happen someday. We're just gonna speak it into existence for now.
Manifest this.
I think we covered it on our podcast. Was the Jim Carrey story when he was they actually the Stanley was
how
in
he
Dumb
ran
and Dumber,
to the room.
and he tried to stay in that. What is it? Room 120.
In 217.
Yeah, he tried to stay there, and he came running out at 3 a.m, and he's never told anybody what happened or told anybody anything about that story. Yeah.
Yeah, which is so funny to me because that's where Elizabeth is.
Yeah.
So- I
wonder what happened with him and Elizabeth.
I wonder if he was taunting her.
Making faces in the mirror.
Maybe. Practicing all of his Dumb and Dumber faces.
Yeah, and she just was like, she wasn't having it that night, so she just unleashed a hell wrath upon him.
And then he probably said, "So you're saying there's a chance," after she did that to him.
All right.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that, Hannah.
Yeah, what do you got for us today?
Today, we are going to go into the disappearance of Brian Shaffer.
That's a local one, isn't it?
Mm-mm.
Oh, I'm thinking of
it is
another one.
Midwest. It takes place in Ohio.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm definitely thinking of another one then.
So, Brian Shaffer was born on February 25th, 1979, to Randy and Renee Shaffer. They lived in, I can't ever say this right the first time, Pickerington, Ohio.
Pickerington? There we go.
Yeah. It's just a suburb outside Columbus. He was the eldest of two sons, graduated high school in 1979. Right out of high school, Brian went to Ohio State and for his undergraduate. 6 years later, Brian would graduate with a degree in microbiology. And in 2004, he would go on to study at OSU College of Medicine. During his second year, in March 2006, unfortunately his mom, Renee, passed away. She had a cancer of the blood cells, which causes the blood cells that are immature, they won't mature to become healthy blood cells. So she could not regenerate make healthy blood cells with this cancer.
That's rough.
It is. Brian's friends did say he handled it pretty well, but even Brian admitted that her death was still very hard for him. But it didn't stop Brian from attending medical school. He would go on to meet and become romantically involved with another medical student. Her name was Alexis Wagner. After a few years of dating Alexis, her family believed Brian would propose to her. Since the couple had been planning a spring break visit at the beginning of April in 2006, locations like tropical weather were very appealing to Brian, and this was made them choose Miami for their next spring break getaway.
Okay.
So, on March 31st, 2006, this ended spring break in Ohio, or this ended the classes for spring break in Ohio. And that same night, Brian and his father, Randy, went out to celebrate the occasion with a nice steak dinner. Randy noted Brian seemed very exhausted while at dinner. Come to find out, Brian pulled many all-nighters earlier in the week to prepare for his final exams. I mean, I could only imagine what medical exams are like.
Oh my God.
Especially he's
I've
6 years
heard
into
that
it.
You don't sleep when you have finals as a medical student.
So Randy didn't think it was a good idea for Brian to go out with his friends that same night, but he didn't express it to Brian. After the dinner, Randy headed home, said goodbye to his son Brian, and around 9 p.m., Brian met up with his friend Clint at the Ugly Tuna Saloon, which is a very interesting name.
Yeah, that place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone's been to the Ugly Tuna Saloon, right?
For sure. Sounds delicious.
At around 10 p.m., Brian had called his girlfriend Alexis to check in on her. Alexis had returned home to Toledo to visit with her family before her and Brian left for Miami. After the call, Brian and Clint went bar hopping, like ones would do after when spring break starts.
Yeah.
They visited several different bars and worked their way down towards the Arena District. And according to Clint, at each stop the two would make, they would have a shot of whatever tickled their fancy at the time.
Oh, one of those nights.
Mm-hmm. A little after midnight, the two met up with one of Clint's friends. Her name was Meredith Reed. Meredith had given them a ride back to the Ugly Tuna Saloon and joined them for the last round of the night. While the three were there, Clint and Meredith noticed Brian had left them. So, what do you do when your friend just wanders off drunk? You try and call them, right?
Yeah.
So the two tried calling Brian repeatedly, but just no answer. So eventually the bar closed at around 2 p.m. Clint and Meredith left with all the rest of the patrons. The two waited outside for Brian, thinking, hell, he'll just come out with the rest of the crowd since there were still some people inside. But when everyone had cleared out of the bar, Brian was not one of them. The two figured Brian must have gotten tired and went back to his apartment without letting either of them know. The next morning, Brian's dad and his girlfriend tried calling him, and it would go straight to voicemail. The two tried multiple times to call Brian throughout the weekend, but again, no answer and still straight to voicemail. And on Monday morning, Brian missed his flight with Alexis to Miami. That was when he was finally reported missing to the Columbus police.
How many days later?
This happened on Friday, is when he had the steak dinner and went out with his friends,
Yeah.
and it was Monday. So they tried all weekend to contact him with no, and then they decided on Monday when they were
such-
supposed to go to Miami.
Precious time. That was such precious time.
It was. I don't disagree.
And I get it that the
What's
police
that?
don't necessarily want to jump and put all resources out on someone who's not a minor or something like that, because adults can just go off on their own. But still, in this day and age,
Yeah.
with this being able to contact someone instantaneously, that does seem like a long time before you'd raise some concern.
Yeah, to not even text your friends like in the morning or something, but like, hey, sorry, I was tired, I just dipped, like my phone was dead, whatever.
Right.
It's very weird.
I think it was one of my friends who just upped and left. I'd give him the night and then try calling him again in the morning.
Yeah,
And
like
then
at least try
if
to make sure
not-
they made it home okay.
Yeah, or
like,
Yeah, then I would go to the place at
Text
least.
them. I accidentally ended up at the Raunchy Tuna, wrong bar.
wrong bar.
It's wrong euphemism, I think. Yeah.
So once Brian was reported missing to the police, they started their investigation. They started at the Ugly Tuna Saloon, where Brian was last seen. Given the bar was in a high crime rate area, the bar had many security cameras, which could play into Brian's favor.
You mean the Ugly
Police
Tuna is
reviewed-
not in the best part of town?
No,
You mean to tell me?
This story is just
Shocking.
sorry, I know the name gives it away. Like it's in this 5-star, classy,
Yeah,
upscale
it's so-
community,
Right? Like, it sounds like someplace out in Edina.
right? Bunch of leaders. So police reviewed all the footage from the bar security cameras. It showed around 1:15 a.m. Brian, Clint, and Meredith going to the escalator at the bar's main entrance to go up to the main floor. And at around 1:55 a.m., Brian was seen outside the bar talking with two ladies. And then a little while later, you can see them saying goodbye to each other. Then Brian moves off camera towards the entrance of the bar, assuming that he went back into the bar. But cameras didn't catch him leaving the bar when it closed at 2 a.m. This would be the last known time Brian was seen again.
Oh, so they never even saw him leave the bar on the
Nope.
cameras.
They sure didn't.
That's crazy.
Investigators haven't ruled out that Brian may have brought a change of clothes or put a hat to cover his face for whatever reason. These are just theories and speculations the police have at this time. But the cameras might have just missed him entirely. Due to one camera, it pans back and forth, while the other camera has to be operated manually compared to the other fixated CCTVs. Also thought maybe Brian went out another way, but the only other exit would have been the service door in the back. But even sober, these doors can be hard to open if you've never used a service door before,
Yeah.
let alone intoxicated like Brian likely
yeah, because
was.
he had a shot at the Ugly
Oh.
Tuna and he had one at the Dirty Rooster.
I was trying to think of more, and I'm
Oh, he had another one at the Salty Clams.
Yes.
right.
Oh,
I was gonna say,
man.
though, drunk people are crafty, though.
Drunk people are.
So, like, I even if something's difficult to open, I still wouldn't put it past a drunk person to get the motherfucker open.
Right? So here's a little fact about Columbus, since this is where it was all taking place.
Okay.
They actually have the most security cameras out of any city in Ohio.
Nice.
It's even more than Cleveland and Toledo, the next two largest cities combined.
Wow.
So police went to to all the neighboring bars to look at their security camera footage of their security camera footage as well. But after days of looking at the footage, none of the cameras showed any trace of Brian.
That's insane.
Right? It's crazy. The search now started to move away from the Ugly Tuna Saloon and all the other bars. Police were looking closely at the streets and looking in every dumpster and waste container that they could find. Maybe Brian fell in, or maybe he was attacked and dumped. I mean, these are all still speculations. We have no idea.
Yeah.
At this time, police cannot rule out anything to where Brian might be. Police even brought in police dogs, hopefully to pick up on Brian's scent. While searching, police would stop people walking down the street and ask if they've seen Brian. Flyers were up everywhere covering different, like telephone poles, business sides, everything. His picture was everywhere. You couldn't go down without seeing Brian's face at this time. The pictures used were one of Brian that had his upper right arm exposed to show a stick figure tattoo from the cover artwork of the single song Alive by Pearl Jam, one of Brian's all-time favorite bands.
Okay.
Police had to persuade the city of Columbus to let them search the sewer systems. Even with the city granting them the permission to search the sewers, no useful information or traces of Brian were found.
That's so unfortunate.
While police were at Brian's apartment, they found his car still parked and nothing seemed amiss from his car or his apartment. After searching miles in every direction from the bar, police had to start considering other possibilities other than foul play or an accident.
Like aliens?
Maybe.
I'm sorry.
Aliens!
I'm sorry, it's not funny. A person is missing.
Police noted that Brian's mother had recently passed away, so police started to speculate that maybe Brian had gone away temporarily to grieve in solitude. But even with that theory, there is no evidence to prove that Brian's disappearance was voluntary.
Mm-hmm.
With police options starting to dwindle, they asked everyone who had seen Brian that night to take a lie detector test. Randy and Meredith took their test. They both passed with flying colors, but Clint refused to take the test. The two women Brian was last seen with were asked to take the test as well, but during an interview in 2009, 3 years later, both women said they were never asked to actually take a lie detector test.
Oh,
So police reports said that they asked them, but they never did.
interesting.
But this also could be a he said, she said
So
kind of
weird
deal,
thing to lie
Yeah,
about, but
yeah.
okay.
right?
Lie about a lie detector test. That's double negative. Yeah.
Alexis would call Brian's phone before going to bed for a very long time after his disappearance, but it would usually go straight to voicemail. Until one night, the phone rang 3 times before going to voicemail. And Alexis wrote right after she got this on her MySpace page. Remember that?
Oh, man.
The good old days.
Right. She wrote on her MySpace page, "I kept calling it to hear it purely because it was one of the best sounds I have ever heard, even if no one picked up." Police reached out to Alexis's service provider, Singular at the time, to maybe trace his phone. After looking into call records, Singular stated the ringing Alexis heard may have actually been due to a computer glitch. One ping was detected from Alexis's phone from a cell tower that was 14 miles northwest of Columbus. So they're thinking that there was a glitch of some kind, because why would a cell phone
Yeah.
signal go 14 miles
Yeah.
for a signal?
Oh, that's so unfortunate. That's heartbreaking.
Isn't it? Over the investigation, police received many tips, but none resulted in any kind of breakthrough. Later that year, Pearl Jam was performing a concert in Cincinnati, and the lead singer took time in between songs and asking the audience if they had any information in bringing up Brian's disappearance.
Oh, that just gave me chills. That's...
But unfortunately, any information they received was not useful. And oddly enough, there have been reporting sightings of Brian in Michigan, Texas, and even Sweden.
He's getting around?
All were investigated, but none led to Brian. But Randy never gave up hope finding his son. And in the fall of 2008, a heavy windstorm blew through the city of Baltimore where Randy was living. And while he was clearing debris from his yard, a branch broke off a nearby tree and fatally struck Randy.
Oh, no.
He was found the next morning by his neighbors, and they called the police. And after Randy's obituary had been posted online, they posted a condolences page underneath his obituary where people could say their goodbyes and hearts and thoughts and prayers and everything. While one person was looking through all the condolences, there was one condolence that was written that stood out to them. It said, "To Dad, love Brian." And for some reason it had in parentheses, Virgin Islands. So maybe Brian went there? Which led investigators to believe Brian might have left to start a new life. And after searching where this post came from, investigators found it was from a computer in Franklin County that the public can use. Franklin County is in Ohio.
Oh.
And it was determined that it was a hoax.
Yeah.
People
Man.
suck.
I was going to say, I mean, like, I think a lot of us have gone out and had those, like, 2 a.m. nights where we're drinking and we really just want to, like, up and start a new life. But not many of us just, like, do it right then and there.
Right? I hate this week. I'm going to start a new life.
I'm going to go to the Virgin Islands.
When we were that age and out drinking, I felt like I was always the shepherd and made sure everyone, didn't disappear and got back to the place where we had started.
Oh, you were
I
the
was
dad,
the dad
of the group
Nice.
sometimes.
You always need a mom or dad in the group.
Somebody yell at you and get you to bed and drink your water.
Yeah, make sure that you're drinking water in between your drinks and eating something. Make sure you make it to the Ubers.
With the car keys goes to a different part of the bar, you follow them there.
Yep.
Right. And shortly after Randy's death, a private investigator named Don Corbet, who volunteered to help the family find Brian, was investigating into Brian's best friend Clint. Because some things just weren't adding up.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think I
Clint's-
like Clint.
Right? Like Clint's refusal to take a lie detector test. But according to Clint's attorney, Clint stated, "I do not have anything to hide. I had merely told everything I knew from the beginning and did not see the value of doing it again."
Okay, I guess.
I mean, yeah, like I get it, but at the same time,
Your friend is missing.
Your friend is like, Clint doesn't seem very concerned his friend is missing.
That's the weird thing in all these stories is until you have it happen to you, what is the right way to act when a close loved one goes missing? Because it's like we
That
have
is true.
expectations of what they should do. They should be sadder than what they appear to be. They're doing too much stuff. But it's like until you've had that happen to you, it's probably still very individualistic.
And it really is, like, even when you're in that moment, you're like, you don't know, speaking from my own personal experience, you don't know what to do. You feel like there's so much more you should be doing. You feel helpless because you feel like you can't do everything that you think you should be doing. You know, you just don't even know what to do, and it's hard just going through your, like, everyday life and everyday emotions, being like, is there something else I should be doing right now instead of this? Or be allowed to go out and enjoy my time still while, you know, my friend is missing and we don't know where they are. So it's...
those are some really valid points. Like, yeah, how do you just go on after your friend just upped and left, or if you just had a loved one pass away?
Yeah.
I don't think there's truly a right answer, like Brian was saying, to how one does react to that kind of information.
Especially when there are so many what ifs and so many unknown variables. It's like you feel lost in the midst of all of it, and it's weird. It's very weird, and it's very surreal. I
don't know if you're ever going to do the Jacob Wetterling case on this podcast. I was a student at St. John's, which was very close to where St. Joseph's is when it happened. And it was just such a shock in that community, and the sister school, St. Benedict's, is there, and so I was in that town a lot to have it happen, and it was such a shock that for Patty and I can't remember the dad's name, that just what all they went through and ended up being so very public. They handled it with grace, but again, that's not necessarily the way that everyone has to handle it.
Yeah.
Right.
It's very, very individualized. It varies from person to person and case to case, for sure.
And I will say that I will be covering the Jacob Wetterling case at some point here on the podcast and share his story. It is one that I definitely truly want to do, since I did live in St. Cloud for a while. I actually dated a girl who went to St. Ben's.
Small world, so did I. Not the same girl, I'm sure.
Yeah, probably not. But,
Can you imagine?
oh man, that'd be a really small world. Like, okay then.
What? Also the age difference. I'm like,
Exactly.
So with our suspicions of Clint, Alexis, Brian's girlfriend, had her own suspicions of Clint too.
bet
Like
she
he's hiding
did.
something. Because Clint also believes that Brian is still alive and he's being selfish for putting everyone through this. But
really?
yeah, that's what Clint, he openly stated that.
That's quite the ballsy statement.
But his longtime girlfriend Alexis, without a doubt, believes that it is likely Brian is dead and did not run off anywhere. She just couldn't imagine Brian ever doing something like this. To come to know somebody that close, it just was not in his MO. It's not in his character to do that.
Yeah.
And as of 2014, Columbus police state they still get about 2 tips a month, but all the tips they receive are still not helpful.
2 tips a month.
Oh.
That's a lot for a case that's that old.
Yeah.
I feel like. I guess I wouldn't know. But.
In your research for this at the super salty ugly tuna, is there like a river nearby?
You know, I don't know if there's a river nearby, actually.
U of M students, University of Minnesota students, with it being so close to the Mississippi River, there's been a couple cases of drunk college students falling into the river and drowning.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I remember there was like a year where it happened to like 6 or something in 1 year, like a 14-month period or something. And then they were finding like spray painted smiley faces, and they thought there might be a...
Yeah, there was the smiley face killer.
And that is one theory about of Brian's case too, that they think is a smiley face killer. But there's also the smiley face theories as well, that could be potentially multiple copycat killers, or it could be a cult of some kind as well doing this.
And then there's also just a theory that with how many people spray paint smiley faces, that there's a chance that it's all coincidence, that these things all happen.
And to answer your question, Brian, if it's near a river, it is a few miles away from a river.
That's not like
Columbus. Yeah. Is it the Columbus River?
Yeah, not like you walked out the front of the door and stumbled into it.
Yeah.
Police even have 4 very full boxes of evidence that they are still stumped with. They about once a year they still search through all those boxes of evidence to see if they've missed something. Police have openly stated that they have 3 main theories about Brian's disappearance, but have declined to comment on these theories every time they're asked about them, because they don't want it to get out to the media and potentially have this blow up or something.
Yeah.
As of March 2021, it has been 15 years since Brian's disappearance. The Ohio Bureau of Investigation has released an age-progressed photo of what he might look like. He would be 42, and actually he'd be 44 this year. We will have a post of his age progression on the post, or when we post on social media when we post this. If anyone listening here has any information on Brian Shaffer, we ask you to call the Ohio Police Tip Line, or you can submit a tip online at stopcrime.com.
Stopcrime.com.
All of a sudden it just blended together. Yes, at Tiplon, you can submit a tip online at Damn it.
I was going to say, you don't want to go to Steinkrapper's from your work computer.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might find some weird stuff. Let's try it one more time. You can submit a tip online at stopcrime.com. We will also have the police tip line on the post.
Yes, we will.
And that wraps up the disappearance of Brian Shaffer. As of this day, we still do not know what happened to him. There has never been any trace to find out where he went, anything. It's like he literally got sucked up in a UFO and just vanished off the face of the earth.
It's so unfortunate because the family doesn't get any closure. Obviously, his dad definitely didn't get any closure before he passed, and it's heartbreaking for everyone involved.
It is.
And I think Hannah touched this earlier. The first 48 hours are so important in an investigation, and really he had been disappeared for more than 48 hours before anything started, so there are clues that have gone missing or will never be uncovered. And then also, I mean, there was, like you said, Columbus had the most cameras in Ohio, but even now, 15 or 17 years later, the proliferation of cameras has gotten so much more where it would be almost a lot tougher to have this kind of happen now because there's so much footage. And
there's so much ring. Everybody's got a ring in their front that they use the footage of.
Oh, yeah. It is amazing that we can't find somebody.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing I did miss is in 2019, there was reported of a man that looked like Brian Shaffer in Tijuana, Mexico. But FBI went down, located him, wasn't him.
Wow.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That was probably the closest they thought they were gonna get.
That's insane that they went to that measure.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
Have you guys ever had I'm hoping that he faked his own death because that means he's still alive, but have you guys ever had the urge to do that? I think it'd be kind of cool to fake your own death and just go on and see what everybody says about you on Facebook and everything and see what they say about you. But if I did it, I'd screw it up because 3 months later, I'd probably go on and tweet and say, I can't believe what the Vikings are doing at quarterback or something like that.
I'd probably accidentally like somebody's new profile picture and everybody would be like,
I listened to a different podcast called Dumb People Town, and there was someone that they did do that up to the part of the funeral, and then they showed up. I should have looked into it more. I didn't know we were going to get to this point, but they just announced it and then had the funeral and then said, "Oh, I'm still alive," but to hear the people say stuff about him. My mom, who I'm sure won't listen to this, she's asked me to tell her stuff that I would say at her eulogy.
No.
So I've told her some things. She wants to write her own and have my daughter deliver it. So everyone's got their, how they want to their final. their final chapter, their final curtain call, their final bow.
Yeah. Remember a few months ago there was some pictures from somebody's grandma's or aunt's funeral, and in like the little cards for all the guests, they had put a little pretend Ouija board in there, and with something like, "Oh, I'll talk to you soon."
Wow.
Oh, did you see the video? It was a guy getting buried in Scotland, and they had him play. He was terminally ill with cancer. He recorded himself like knocking on like wood and saying, "It's very dark in here. Let me out."
No. Wow.
Like it's a very funny but very heartfelt video. Like everyone's laughing, and like apparently this guy was just a huge jokester throughout his entire life. Obviously,
I feel like if you weren't a jokester and you did that, then you're just cruel.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, look it up sometime. It's hilarious. It's like Scottish funeral recording or something like that.
When I was in the fire department, they asked if there's any hymn you'd want. If you die in the line of duty, is there any hymn you'd want played? So I put Mr. Roboto by Styx, because that way it was legally binding. They would have to play it at my funeral.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, that was the whole hope. Yeah.
Man, that would have been great.
Well, I guess speaking of graves and all of that, I've got our cemetery fun fact. So this one's about plants. Tying a piece of black ribbon around plants on someone's death will prevent the plant from dying too. I'm gonna guess it's speaking to like maybe plants that have been planted like around the burial site.
Oh, not like in a vase.
Yeah, and then I guess if you tie a piece of black ribbon around it, it will keep them happy and healthy. It's a little bit of magic or something.
Do they have to be 6 inches? Does no one get the reference? 6 inches.
I don't.
Possibly can't wrap a present like
6
that.
feet under. Was it?
No, from Elf.
From Elf. Well, he came out of left field for that one.
Sorry, we were talking about it at work the other day, and I was just like, 6 inches. That's why we were just yelling at work the other day.
Well, I know you on your podcast. You always have the cemetery fun facts. I have a little quick cemetery story if I can share it with you.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, of course.
So
Yes, Brian.
in the 70s, my dad mowed the cemetery that goes along with St. Agatha's Church in Coates, Minnesota. And us kids would go with sometimes just because, my mom was a stay-at-home mom and she needed a break from us. So we would go with, and one side had all the gravestones and the other side had none, and my dad had thought they had like wood markers, and so there's people buried there, but the markers have since rotted away. But in the way back corner there were a couple stones, and one of them looked like the white granite that you would see at a military cemetery, but it was so all mossed over and everything you really couldn't read it. So then recently a former neighbor, he's godfather to my son, his father had passed away and was being buried in the Coates Cemetery. So it'd been probably 35, 40 years since I'd been there. And so, of course, we're interested. We're walking around because we know some people from that area and who else's their graves are there. And after we laid my friend's dad to rest, we went back in the corner, and there was a brand new, taller granite military-type headstone. And this person who was born in the 1840, 1841, somewhere around there, and had died in 1890 something, but he was in the 1st Minnesota Company C, so he would have fought at Gettysburg and is buried at that little cemetery out in Coates, or a mile south of Coates, Minnesota. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I'm trying to think if I have any good cemetery stories.
You guys know why cemeteries always have a fence around them, don't you?
It's to keep the skeletons in.
No. Everybody's dying to get in.
Oh,
I had to hit you with a dad jokes before we know. Yeah.
That's fine.
So Brian, we both know Bill, right? So Bill and I went to the UP, and every time we passed a cemetery, he would say what Mike just said. Every time. Bill, if you are listening to this, I'm going to kill you.
I'm going to put you in the cemetery myself.
Yeah, I should have. That's what I should have done while they're there. We had a shovel and everything.
I I mean, other than when me and you were in the UP cast.
The Upers.
And we went to Mackinac Island.
Mm-hmm.
We took a shortcut through the cemetery on the island, and I had a spirit box with me, and we opened it. I think that just about every time we walked past a row of headstones, we'd hear, "Hi, hello."
Yeah, like,
wow.
Look at us.
Mm-hmm.
Hello.
I think we heard it over here, and we were like,
yeah, we're like, over where? Like, it was crazy. I think
Austin started walking faster.
Yeah,
real
just
quick.
a little bit. I was still kind of new to the whole like paranormal scene. Like, I love ghosts and everything, but I've never actually done anything like that yet.
I'm like, let's sit under a tree in the cemetery, and he's like, no.
It was a good thing your blood sugar started to drop.
Yeah, that's true. All right, well, I think that is our episode 17.
That is episode 17. Mike, you got anything to share?
Yeah, do you want to tell people where they can find you on social media, to listen, any of that good stuff?
Yeah, you can find the 70s versus the 80s on all the same platforms that you're listening to this podcast on. And like I said, we got new episodes coming about usually more than one a month, right, Brian? And
we have busy lives and do the best.
Me and Brian both work double jobs, and it's hard for us to get on, but it almost works better when we're both busy like that. It makes it easier and stuff.
One of them, going back to a previous episode of yours, Austin and Hannah, is I deliver pizzas as a second job as a older than 40-something-year-old, and I won't go in anybody's house except if I know them, or it's like, nope, I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, come on in. It's like, nope, I'm just going to stand here.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a smart move right there.
Sometimes I deliver too. I used to deliver a lot for the place that I work at, but we would get like delivery notes. Sometimes I'd be like, "Oh, come around to the backyard," or like, "Come to the back door." And I'm like, "Oh, God, do I have to?"
Right? Like, can you just front door pizza go?
Why don't you just wait in the driveway for me instead? I'll feel a little safer.
Oh, they want you to go to the back door, because that used to be the thing. They'd make you go to the back door, and then if you have more pizzas in your car, somebody would be in the front, and they'd take them all. That used to be a thing for a while. I don't know if it still is, but yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's not surprising in the slightest, though.
Yeah. Thankfully, I've made it out alive every time.
I've had instructions to bring it around to the pool, but nothing fun's ever happened from it.
Yeah, I've had a couple of those too. I'm like, you're going to invite me? I did one time. I had a delivery note that said, "We're out back by the lake," and they had this huge chunk of property, so I had to like walk across the length of their property. And they're sitting by the lake with their wine, and they're having a bunch of fun and everything. And they were like, "You want a glass of wine? Do you want to sit down for a minute?" I was like, God, I wish. I think the next time I went there, they gave me fresh baked cookies that just came out of the oven, so on top of a tip. So
the best tip of all.
Yeah. So anytime their address comes up, I'm like, I'll take that one.
Well, guys, we appreciate you guys coming on, and thanks for reaching out to us and everything. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, it's been really great working with you guys, and hopefully we can do something fun around Halloween. I know we were talking about doing something, so absolutely do more stuff in the future with you guys, more collabs.
Yeah, fun podcast to listen to, and so it's even been more fun to be on it.
Yeah, you guys are really great, and I hope nobody got annoyed by the 4 Minnesota accents. I mean, it sounds like Fargo season 3 up in here, but well, a majority of our listeners are in Minnesota and Illinois, so I think they'll be fine. I think they'll survive. I mean, I wonder what the guy in Philippines and the guy in Germany think. And Ireland. And, well, I am Irish, so well, we are. We're those Americans that are like, well, I'm Irish. At this point, I'd rather just say I'm Irish. Yeah, that's true. All right, well, we're going to wrap it up then, and we will be back with episode 18 next week. Yeah, to all our listeners out there, we'll see you next week. Brian and Mike, you guys have a great night. You betcha. Oh, yeah. The Bleeding Grave is hosted by Hannah Slavic and Austin Winger. Music by Hannah Slavic. You can find us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can listen to The Bleeding Grave on Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and more.